Hello everyone from the 𝐻𝐸𝐿𝐼 Global Alts Conference here in Miami at the famous Fontainebleau Hotel. We're taping a special edition of our SALT Talks digital interview series here with my co-host Anthony Scaramucci. SALT Talks, for the uninitiated, is a digital interview series with leading investors, creators, and thinkers. What we try to do here on SALT Talks is the same thing we do at our global conference series, which we're excited to embark on our SALT Asia event in Singapore later this year, SALT in Abu Dhabi in about a month, SALT New York in May, and then finally a fantastic digital assets event that we're hosting in Wyoming called the Wyoming Blockchain Symposium that's going to be in August. But what we're trying to do here on these SALT Talks is the same thing we do at our SALT conferences, which is to provide a window into the mind of subject matter experts. One of those subject matters that we're very enthusiastic here at both SkyBridge and SALT is the digital asset ecosystem. And we're very excited today to welcome a four-time technology entrepreneur onto the show, who's the founder and CEO of Figment, which is primarily a blockchain infrastructure company focused on staking, but also building other aspects of blockchain infrastructure. And I'm going to turn it over to Anthony Scaramucci, my co-host, to do the bulk of the interview, but in order to keep Anthony on track, I'm going to sit here and babysit a little bit for his conversation with Lorien Gabel, who again is the founder and CEO of Figment. Anthony, go ahead.
Okay, John, that was very good.
Thank you.
And John did
I winged that. I hadn't done that in a while.
John did that without a teleprompter, which was even more impressive.
It's well done.
All right, well done. Okay, you're showing your age, John. Good for you. Okay, so Lorien, thank you for joining us.
Good to meet you. You know, okay. I bet you don't remember the first time we met. I bet you don't. Restaurant in San Francisco.
Yeah, I was in San Francisco. We were at
right,
the table together.
You know how that night ended?
I don't remember how it ended, but that's the first time I thought I met you. I brought.
That was it. I think you.
I brought Farron,
one of my board members,
Novogratz,
a name to not be, ended up seeing how many push-ups you could do.
Yes, we did.
At the end of the
night. That's correct.
At a very nice San Francisco
restaurant. I was training.
That was my first impression.
I was training for special forces at the time. I did, because I was training for special forces at the time. And I had to show that young kid.
That's right.
That people like you and me still have it.
He was 20 years your junior. I think you took him.
Right.
Well, they call that old man strength.
Thank you for remembering. It's also known as middle-age rage. Okay, so just.
I think you're a little past middle-age rage.
That will come upon you at some point. Okay.
You think you can
senior citizen rage is way worse than middle-age rage.
You think you can outwork the demons, but they'll still be there at the end of that workout.
Yeah, there's no question. There's no question. Well, that's what I want to talk about, because entrepreneurship is very similar. You either feel it or you don't feel it, and if you feel it, it's a benefit, obviously great beneficiary, but it's also a curse because you're incredibly motivated, incredibly driven. So I want to go to your life, and I want you to take us all the way back. You've said that you've lived in communes, you've lived all over the place. Parents were in the military. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing, because I think it's very instructive for some of the young people listening.
Yeah, I think I was very, very fortunate to have a father who had a very eclectic background, was running away from very strict Jewish parents in New York City, first generation immigrants, and everything, all the expectations that come along with your son from doing that. And so his way of escaping was to join the Air Force. But I don't know, you remember the show MASH?
I do.
Back in the day, there was it used to be the most popular show. The final episode may still have been the most watched
125 million people.
Right. So he was like an Alan Alda character.
Yep, 1982. Right? I remember very well.
Right. So
February of '83, actually. But yep, I remember.
There you go. There you go. So dating ourselves. We should stop doing that. So joined the Air Force. Basically, to escape from New York. Was a doctor in the Air Force, and then when he got out, had me. We were living in Asia at the point. Ended up remarrying a Canadian, and so. As got out of the Air Force and decided that was going to check out for a while, and we lived for 7 years on a hilltop in rural Canada with no running water or electricity for most of that, in a house that he built, and then ended up moving to Toronto, going to school, college, law school in Toronto, and that's where we started our first company. So pretty diverse background, moved around a lot as a kid, which at the time I hated. New kid on the block, get beat up all the time, but in hindsight it was like really good independence. Where teaches you to run or fight.
When you move around a lot, you do hate it.
You hate it.
Everybody I talk to about it says, "Well, that taught me resilience. It taught me how to open up a new door.
Yeah.
It taught me that things will be okay when I'm making a change or an adaptation." Is that true?
Yeah, that's absolutely. Like at the time, just another school. Oh my God, this is gonna be horrible. As a quiet kid, really, really bad. I remember a story. We just moved to Hawaii. And and I had been in a Canadian school for a while, and I didn't know the Pledge of Allegiance. And the first day of class, they're like, "Oh, the new kid, you're gonna get up and say the Pledge of Allegiance." Grade 4 or 5 like that. And I'm like, what the hell is the Pledge of Allegiance? We didn't do this. And so I'm like, I look up in pure panic, and at that moment, I like run out of class. And I stop, and I'm like, wait a second, you can't just go back in there. And I'm shaking from fear. And I'm like, look, I don't know the Pledge of Allegiance, so you're gonna have to tell me, but I'll do it. But it was one of those moments where the first instinct was just to run, and then like, you can't run. You got to turn around. You got to come back.
That, right? That's the fight or flight response.
That's the fight or flight response.
All right, so you're coming back in. You go to law school. You go to college. You get yourself educated, but you're an entrepreneur. Okay.
Yeah.
And so when do you know that you're an entrepreneur?
So
I knew at age 11.
You knew at age 11.
Age
paper
11.
route.
Had a paper route.
Right.
I was hustling the papers, and I knew right then and there. You know what? I'm never going to be able to work
Don't
for
want
anybody.
To work for anyone.
I have to figure out how to do this myself.
So, like a lot of success, it's a mixture of luck and good timing. And so my first year as being a lawyer, kind of looking around, getting.
But set the scene for me, Lorien. You're in what state? Are you in Canada as a lawyer?
I'm in Canada. I've graduated from law school. I'm a first-year lawyer in Toronto.
So you have the Canadian bar. You passed the Canadian bar. You're
Yep.
practicing law in Toronto.
Practicing law in Toronto. Graduated in the middle of a recession. It was a little bit hard to get a job. There was a recession in the early '90s. No one remembers it now, like the tequila bond crisis or one of them like that. So it was a little bit hard to get a job, but finally got a job as a lawyer, and getting partners, dry cleaning, doing all that, and looking around me and being like, God, these partners still working hard. 40 years later, still taking direction, still in the office 60 hours a week. This doesn't seem like the best job in the world. Unfortunately, my younger brother, who's been my business partner for 30 years now and through 4 startups, a genius, maybe the smartest person I know, but dropping out of high school because he can't stand direction, and maybe the first Jewish kid ever, where his dad said, okay, you can drop out of your final year of high school, but you got to do something. And my brother's like, there's this thing called the internet. It's going to be big. No, I can barely turn on my computer. I think we should start a company. I don't know anything about how to start a company, but I know the tech. So why don't we start an ISP, help companies get on the internet? But can you help me start a company, because I don't know how to do that. So I left law after 8 months and joined and started our first company, which is one of the first commercial ISPs in Canada. Actually, our original idea was that people should sell things on the internet. And this was pre-browser, and we went to a couple of the big Canadian department stores, which were department stores back in the day, and they're like, put our catalog on the internet? Are you fucking crazy? Right. And but we need email for our employees. Can you do that? We can do that. And then off we go. That was the first company.
What year?
1993 started and sold it to a U.S. telecom provider in '98. So 4 or 5 years. We were kids, you know. He was still a teenager. I was in my mid-20s, so didn't know what the hell we were doing.
All right, but but here's learning lesson, not to interrupt. You saw something, you were bold enough to take the risk. You saw something new that was expanding. We're going to get into crypto in a second.
That's right.
And you said, okay, there's something here. There's a wave. My brother and I are going to catch this wave with this surfboard, ride it into the beach.
That's the timing.
Right, and that's exactly what you did.
That's exactly.
And so now you made some very good money. God bless you. You're a young guy. You made very good money, but you got the itch.
Took a little time off.
You took a little time off.
And
right.
Then,
you did all the things that we would do. You know, we have our George Harrison moment. Right. We're going to meet the Maharishi and all that sort of stuff.
Did actually go to the yes.
Right. And now you come back, but you go, hey, I got to go back to work.
You got to do something.
So what's number 2?
So then we had a data center company back when data centers and people, again, the growth of e-commerce, that era. And so companies, there wasn't cloud hosting at that time. So if you wanted to have a website and sell stuff, you needed to put it the servers in a data center somewhere. So we took old bank mainframe data centers, refurbished them up to internet standards. There were a couple of big companies in the US at that time. Exodus was a big one.
I remember Exodus.
That's right. And you know, that was during the bandwidth WorldCom, all those days when people were building out basically the basic infrastructure of the internet.
Remember all that stuff. Okay, so you create that company. How many years you're in that company?
2 years, and raising our B or C round right in the middle of 2001, which made this crash in the last couple of years look like child's play. So for those who remember 2001, big tech crash. At that time we had a choice to raise money on pretty bad terms or sell our company to AT&T Canada, and we did that.
Let's interject for the youngins though. When you talk about a big tech crash, the NASDAQ went down 78%. 78% from the high to the low during that period of time. And people were like, what's going on? And then there was a generation of people that swore off technology. They said, well, I got very badly burned. I watched my Amazon stock go from 116 to 8. I'm done with technology. And those people, unfortunately, missed the greatest run in U.S. economic history. So very big learning lessons here. You could be on the right cycle, you could be on the right trend, but you have to ride through the storms. Again, we're going to get to crypto later, but let's keep talking. So now you sell that company, right?
Sell that company, and then decide, like, I got to get out of Canada, move to New York, and one of my ISP co-founder friends had started a cloud security company out of London and needed someone to run the US. And I was like, I'm in New York, I'm not doing anything, getting into trouble, I should probably go into an office. And end up being there for 5 or 6 years, a company called Meshes Labs. And we end up selling to Symantec in 2008.
Okay.
That was the third one.
Was it before the crash in 2008 or during the middle of it?
No, it was closing during the middle of it, which is another crazy story about whether it's actually going to close or not. It was an all-cash deal, and 24 hours of people waiting, and then it ended up closing, but it was right in the middle of the crash.
Okay, so that's startup number 3, but I want to ask you this question because you have good historical perspective and you've lived through certain things. How do you handle these crashes? How do you handle these boom-bust cycles? What's your advice to people?
So it's pretty funny, like we have, I don't know how many of our, but we have a good number of people at the company who didn't live through 2008, much less 2001, or one of the debt crises in the 90s. And I still, like 2008 for me, I don't know about you, feels like yesterday. Like the fear and the panic and right, like it doesn't feel like 2008. It's just a long time ago.
So I'm going to tell you something that you'll enjoy. 1998, I got the doors blown off of me. So just to set the scene, the Thailand, the bot crisis. Then you remember the sovereign debt crisis in Russia. Boris Yeltsin said they're not going to pay back the sovereign debt. I watched my fund that I started in 1996 go down 35% unlevered. It was unlevered, went down 35%. I said, okay, I'm going to go out of business. And it really taught me a lesson about patience and fortitude and staying in there. So by 1998 going to 2008, when that hit, which was worse than 1998, in some ways I was more fortified. Right. Do you feel
there's a straight line there, I think, from there to digital assets, and it was in the late 90s and long-term capital, which wasn't a government bailout, but it was a government facilitated bailout, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's where you started to see there's the Mexican bond crisis, which was a bailout.
94, 95.
That's right. So I think you get a direct line actually from there to 2008 and then Bitcoin. That's really a reaction to the government bankouts. And I think you can take that line, draw it straight through all the populist stuff going on now.
Right. So Satoshi basically makes a decision. Wow, this is we got drunk driving. Central banks are drunk driving. Sovereign governments are drunk driving with their sovereign debt.
Too big to fail.
We got to take the money away from the government, and we got to put it in a decentralized format so that people can trust it. Because we really can't trust the money anymore. Right. And oh, by the way, since they're borrowing so much money, they're going to have to monetize their debt through inflation. So if you earn $1 today, you're going to have 90 cents of purchasing power in 2 years.
Last 10 years, I looked it up on the way here. Last 10 years, inflation, over 30%.
Yeah.
So
okay.
If you just held $1 in the last 10 years, not that long.
Right.
30%.
Okay, but Lorien, the thing about that though, that's psychologically so damaging, if I own the asset, and the asset's worth $1 and it goes up 30%, I feel richer because I'm nominally richer, even though I'm not richer from real economic terms. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, so that's why people are able to live with and able to tolerate it. I've got...
Except for the guy driving the pickup truck.
Well, that's the problem. And
fixing things every day.
Yep. Who's got their...
Doesn't have that asset.
Their time and energy is their money.
That's right.
And so wait a minute, you're giving me $1 for all the energy I just expended, but now that $1 is not worth what you just gave me. It's really not fair to me. It's really not fair to my family.
It's a form of theft.
And they become very angry.
Right. It's a form of theft.
And they resort to populist politicians, and they're looking for politicians that represent their anger.
That's right.
And here we are. We've got AOC, Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders, and my good friend Elizabeth Warren.
And your good friend Elizabeth.
Okay, so let's go to startup number 4.
Figment. So the last one, I think, which is...
Well, you're on tape saying it's the last one, so you have to promise me when you're starter number 5, you got to come back on our podcast because you can't get out of it. You're like the Michael Corleone of startups and entrepreneurship.
They keep drawing you back in.
Okay, so go ahead, Figment.
So
tell us what Figment is.
2018 again.
Congratulations on Figment, by the way.
Thank you, appreciate that. 2018, my brother's like, hey, there's this blockchain crypto thing. It's been around for a few years, not one of the first in Bitcoin, anything like that. So relatively late to the space considering probably when you got into it.
Well, I got in October, November of 2020, so you're in before me.
A little bit, you know, but as you had pointed out, there are people who were in it 2011 and had Bitcoin at 10 cents. That wasn't me. Basically said, hey, I'm interested in this cryptography aspects of decentralized computing networks. We have a second co-founder, Andrew, who was like interested in the privacy and the lack of privacy on the internet and what the internet had become. And I sort of had this lingering feeling like we need an alternative to the large banks, which I think to some extent are, I don't know the definition of a criminal organization, but if you look at the fines that the large banks have paid over the last 10 or 20 years, too big to fail. Can't,
$38 billion for J.P. Morgan. I know that Elizabeth Warren saying that the money laundering and all the theft and trafficking is coming off of Bitcoin.
And not $38 billion for failing to dot an I or cross a T on some regulation, like Mexican drug cartels, mortgage fraud, Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, not scandal. Little things.
No, there's a lot.
If you and I did that individually, we wouldn't be sitting here.
No, I understand. And look, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. I'm not blaming. Things happen. Okay, I'm obviously a customer of a lot of these big banks, and so I'm not here to throw stones. I'm just trying to point out why throw stones at crypto when we know that the system itself is flawed. Okay,
so our thought was basically my personal feeling is that I'm not an anarchist like you. I serve these institutional clients. They're our base. We don't serve consumers for our staking services. So I'm not an anarchist, but I do believe there should be an alternative. Like if you want to send some money to someone in Mexico and you don't why do you need a big bank who charge you a bunch of money to do that? Shouldn't you be able to do that directly? And shouldn't you have a choice? Maybe Elizabeth Warren's right. Maybe there's no use for crypto. I don't know. Maybe at the end of the day there won't be. But why not give people the choice? Why should there be a monopoly on one value? Where's it written that the government has a monopoly on it? And why do you need intermediaries in this day and age?
Let me play Elizabeth Warren, my favorite person, because I like control.
Who's not done a good job of regulating these entities, I want to point out.
Well, exactly, but she's now bought and paid for by the American Banking Association, but I like control. And so what I do want is a central bank digital currency that will give me control. It'll give me social scoring for a population, and I'll be able to dictate whether you're a good actor or a bad actor. So control is good. Lack of control, decentralization, libertarianism, the idea of personal freedom, very bad. I don't like that. Why would I like that? I'm smarter than you.
Yes.
I should take money from your pocket and put it in my pocket because I know better how to deploy it than you do.
It's top down.
So why would I like that?
That's right. It's about control and it's top down. And unfortunately in American politics you need to find the bad person, right? You got to have someone you can set yourself up to in contrast.
To have a scapegoat. I mean,
you gotta have
she's got an army of people that she's going to hire to protect the proletariat against crypto. In the meantime,
how many people on her staff do you think you have rotated between the organizations that they supposedly regulate?
Well, so I don't know the exact number, but we do know that is happening now. There's a revolving door, big pharma into the FDA, big food in and out of the FDA,
so
banks going in and out of the SEC, in and out of the staff.
Why not give someone an alternative? That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
People want to try different methods
for transferring value.
How
do I use Figment?
All right, so you're probably familiar with Ethereum. Ethereum has made the transition last year into something called proof of stake. There's basically two operating systems for blockchains. One's proof of work, which Bitcoin runs on and always should. It works. This isn't a criticism of that, but you've heard about Bitcoin mining, where people are running big data centers that consume a lot of electricity and computing power. So that's one method of securing and running a blockchain in a decentralized way. Ethereum last year made the transition to proof of stake, which is basically the same way of doing it with less computing power and less electricity being used. So it's more efficient and in theory more scalable. And so if you have 32 ETH, give you and me a month, 50-50, we could probably figure out how to run our own Ethereum node. So you take 32 ETH, you spin up a node, and then it's like having a credit card and being able to process credit card transactions as part of the network and then taking some of those fees. So basically, if you have 32 ETH or you hold Solana, you can basically run and participate in the protocol in a decentralized way. So as a token holder, you're actually an owner. You can think of it as that as the protocol. So individuals can do that on their own. Many do. There's thousands of people who run their own nodes. But if you're an institution and you have a couple $100 million or $1 billion worth of Ethereum and a fiduciary, you don't want to run that infrastructure on your own. It's hard to scale. It's complicated. There are some small risks associated with it. So you would have someone like us run those computers on your behalf, and it's called staking.
So I come in with my several $100 million worth of Ethereum,
Right.
and I say, Lorien, I want you to run the staking program for me.
That's right.
And you'll do the staking, you'll handle all those transactions, you'll handle all the
We'll run the
facilitation.
computers. And you don't give us, just to be clear, we're not a counterparty. You still hold custody however you hold. You basically elect our computers to run on your behalf.
Okay. And so you get a small piece of the
I get a small
tokenomics,
weight, yeah. So
and
it's
the
like
rest of the economics come back.
That's right.
What's the split?
So we start at like 10% as a starting point, and then our largest clients will be down to 1 or 2 percentage points of their rewards.
Okay, but correct me if I'm wrong, because of your efficiency and your scalability, if I give you the money, even though you're taking 10%, you're making the pie bigger for both of us, are you not?
That's right.
Because you're able to
That's right.
grab into more
You're basically as
action.
how you're being compensated
Right.
for locking up your Ethereum for a short period of time and running these computers is that when someone uses Ethereum, they pay a gas fee, you take a little percentage of that, and then we take a percentage of that.
Right, but because of your scale,
That's right.
you're able to
We're
to make
effective, yeah.
me more money.
That's
So
right.
it's
I think
almost-
we're the largest. We're probably close to 6% of ETH block production right now, and so we have a lot of scale,
So
and we do that across 30
Let me
other
put it in
protocols.
basic terms, and just if I can make $1 on my own, if I give it to Figment, I may be able to make $1.10, and Figment makes 11 cents, right?
We take. I wish.
Yeah,
we take a
okay,
percentage of that 10.
Percentage of that 10. Okay,
Percentage of that 10.
but it's more than I would have made.
That's right. That's
but it's
exactly.
more than I would have made on
We
my
have
own.
the scale, right? We have the
Okay.
operating efficiency and all the tools, and all
Right,
that
so
stuff.
what's the end game here?
So look, I think as a founder, focusing on exits is generally a bad idea. I think if you build a good business that makes money over the long term, the exit will take care of itself. But the sort of the long thesis is like, look, if you were a large Bitcoin miner anytime in the last 10 years, you had some large percentage of Bitcoin hash rate, you either are or are a public company. And so my sort of high level thesis is that we want to have a significant amount of block production on Ethereum and Solana and these other protocols. And if we do that effectively for our clients, we do that efficiently, the business will take care of itself.
Okay, I'm a Bitcoin skeptic.
Okay.
I don't like Bitcoin. I don't understand it. I've been told by people like John Stark and Elizabeth Warren that it's financial blather. I'm actually speaking at the Duke University conference this week. They all hate Bitcoin there. They're all hate Bitcoin. So enlighten me. What am I missing? Why should I not hate Bitcoin?
So,
and by the way, I don't hate Bitcoin. I'm
I
playing devil's
understand.
advocate.
I got it.
I'm up to the gills in Bitcoin.
I got it. So, I think basically where Bitcoin is settled out right now until people start doing more transactions on the network is essentially a form of digital gold and a store of and a store of value that may or may not be correlated with other financial assets. So it actually doesn't matter if you hate Bitcoin. Like, great, you hate Bitcoin. No one's forcing you to buy Bitcoin. Right? Like, you're forced to use the Fed system at the end of the day. No one's forcing you to buy Bitcoin. So if you don't like it, it doesn't matter. And it's like,
I don't like it, don't buy it.
Don't buy it.
But then why are other
basically.
people buying it? Because I hate it, and I don't think other people should buy it. I think Bitcoin should trade to zero. So why isn't Bitcoin trading to zero, and why are other people buying it?
It's like telling people that you shouldn't be able to buy art because it has no value. You can't eat it, can't sleep in it. What am I going to do with art? Or a whole host of other things that we consume that don't appear to have like tangible value. So, Generation Z, if they think like, look, take something at the ridiculous end of crypto assets like Dogecoin. Fucking meme coin, right? It's like basically a copy of Bitcoin, but it's a meme. But you know what? The kids don't care. Like, for them, the memes have value. I mean, that's the definition of a meme, is it replicates and grows if it's a successful meme. So we may think, well, that's ultimately ridiculous, but if they want to hold value and they find value in that, that's the human thing. I mean, what's the value of a paper dollar? I guess I can pay my taxes with it, but it's backed by what? I can't walk up to the Fed and get a burger for it, right? Like, it's just a piece of paper. It's all belief. It's a commonly held belief, right? And so Bitcoin's the same thing.
So
It's a commonly held belief
so
that has value.
ultimately
And
it's a
more importantly, it's got a
technology.
limited supply. And humans love limited supply. right? It's in our basic nature.
Right.
So if something has a limited supply, we want to collect it, we want to hold it.
Like real estate in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, for example.
Like real estate in Jackson Hole.
Okay,
has a very limited size.
so John, you're sitting here. Go ahead. You must have some questions.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. You know, staking, you guys are one of the leading staking providers for the Ethereum network in particular. You see different staking providers, there's different yields, or it's not yield technically, but different spreads on what you can, staking reward rates.
Right.
What makes one staking provider be able to provide better rewards than another? What's your competitive advantage relative to other staking providers?
Right. So, by definition, these are decentralized protocols. So it's not a winner-take-all market by definition. In other words, it's not like a social network or a Pareto law distribution necessarily. So you need to have, like, if we were like 30 or 40% of block production on Ethereum wouldn't be decentralized, you wouldn't want to use a decentralized protocol. So there's a natural cap on how it can be. And so there are a whole bunch of providers that will serve their own holdings, they want to do it themselves, or they have a retail customer segment. We've just chosen to serve institutions. So we've gotten very good at compliance, which is obviously a large issue, security, reporting, which is very important and more difficult to do than you would think, customer service, and essentially at scale, these protocols, you need to have geographic diversity in where your infrastructure lies. You don't want to be on just like Amazon East in New York for various reasons. So really it comes down to an institutional grade offering that can serve holders who have huge amounts of ETH or Solana or any of the other protocols. So it's really a market segmentation for us. And I think, as I said, once you have scale at these protocols, you can be the low cost provider, and you basically know and can support the most protocols. There's more than 2 blockchains, there's 30 or 40 that have usage right now. And so really, if you're an institution and a fiduciary, you don't want to go with someone who has a couple servers in their garage, in their basement, basically.
This is more of a meta question for you around decentralized computing. You talked about how your brother and your other co-founder have these different beliefs around decentralized computing. We had a meeting yesterday with one of the executives from Filecoin talking about how they are creating sort of the Airbnb for data centers and data storage. Do you believe that a decentralized internet is an inevitable reality that we'll be able to create, through blockchain and other forms of technology, rather than, as you said, monopolizing all the computing power in AWS data centers and Microsoft data centers? Do you think we'll create a decentralized framework?
I mean, because I'm old enough to have seen what the original internet was like pre-browser. The original vision of the internet, maybe overly idealistic at the time, was that it basically enable peer-to-peer communication without a newspaper, without a book publisher, without a fax, without a telecom provider. Essentially that you would be able to enable and that would have a whole bunch of benefits. And so that was kind of the original vision of the internet in the early 90s, basically. And then what happened, especially in the mid to late 2000s, is you basically had a huge centralization. So you have these massive data monopolies like Google, who make a huge amount of money off your data, don't really know how, and you basically now have 3 or 4 large entities, Facebook, etc., who essentially control large parts of the internet, right? Which has a whole bunch of negative externalities. We've seen it with social media. We've seen it with, they have massive, massive profits of which you don't get any benefit from your data. So I think that, like, if we want to go back almost to why the original internet existed, you need to have a decentralized option. And this is basically what crypto does. So again, I'm not an anarchist. I serve institutions, but I think we need to have an alternative that can return us back, because we're seeing a whole bunch of negative externalities from these a few large companies controlling it. And I'm kind of like a bottom-up guy. Like, look, you got to have a hierarchy at some point, but things get too big, all power corrupts, a little bit of power corrupts a little bit less. And so if there's just a relief or a pressure valve from this, what's happening, whether it's the largest banks or these huge data monopolies, I think that's a good thing for us all.
And these tech titans, as they get big, they have to play ball with the U.S. government, and so it brings back the censorship
You get regulatory capture, inevitably you get that's always how it works. And so the greatness of the American system is that you will allow new technologies, which are potentially disruptive, to be in an experiment, to run in sandboxes, and that's really the health of the system. Like, you just can't have these sporadic institutions, you see what happens, that have total control. It's just bad for the system and it's bad for everyone.
So I want to go to Ethereum for a second, and you might not have a view on this, but there's obviously a ideological battle right now between those that think that Ethereum as the decentralized layer of the internet is inevitably going to dominate the landscape, and there's going to be layer 2s that serve specific purposes that all feed into one settlement layer, which is the Ethereum layer 1. There's others, the Avalanches, the Solanas of the world, that believe that the layer 1 should have fast computing power and should be the most modern protocols, and everything should feed through that, and maybe we'll have a multi-chain world. Do you have a view, given your prominence in the Ethereum ecosystem?
It's a great question. It's a great question, and we sort of, even when we were starting the company, is there going to be, you had to ask yourself, is there going to just be Bitcoin at the end of the day? There are Bitcoin maximalists who say everything else is just a store of value. Everything else is
Lightning Network and things that are trying to tackle the payments piece.
There shouldn't be anything else but Bitcoin. And then there are people like, okay, well, you have Bitcoin for a store of value, digital gold, and then you have Ethereum as a decentralized computing network, and then everything else shouldn't exist. So we had to kind of answer that question from a business strategy perspective. And I think my view at this point is there's not going to be 1 or 2 blockchains. I don't know that there needs to be 10,000. And so somewhere in between there lies the truth, and probably 50 blockchains that have some use case over time, maybe 25 is probably how it'll end up. I don't think you need thousands of individual blockchains and tokens, but you're going to have use cases that neither Bitcoin nor Ethereum will be suitable for.
Last question I have for you is about Wyoming. We talked before the show. I love the state of Wyoming. I love Jackson Hole. I love that area. I love it not just because of its natural beauty, but the state embodies sort of the American spirit of freedom of ideas, creating regulatory guardrails that foster innovation while also promoting responsible behavior. I think the state of Wyoming has created very strong digital asset regulatory frameworks, to the extent that we've decided to do a digital assets event in Jackson, in partnership with the state government, in partnership with the federal regulators and federal members of Congress from the state, which we're very excited. Right? We're doing it in August. This is definitely a plug for that, first of all, in the context of my question. You live in that area.
I do.
Why did you choose to settle in that area, and what have you observed about what Wyoming has done right that maybe could serve as a template for what on the federal level we could do regulatory?
It's an amazing state. It's big, and there's 800,000 people in the whole state.
Was there more cows than people?
More cows than people. I mean, that's how many, and that's the Upper East Side. That's like Santa Monica, right? Or the Upper East Side, New York. So one, it's a big, empty state, full of national parks. Grand Teton National Park, Yellowstone, of course, Targhee National Forest. So just like the natural, it's like extremely underrated as a place to visit either in winter or summer. So it's just like naturally beautiful. You're right, they've taken a great approach to regulation on crypto. They've been in the lead of that. And that's not why I moved there originally. I'd just been in New York City for 15 years, had a son, wanted to have a change of pace, and thought it would be a better environment to raise a kid who gets outdoors once in a while. So that's why I love this state. And then actually, in some ways, COVID was fantastic because it was pretty quiet socially, but a lot of young people moved there from LA and New York and ended up staying and are raising families. So it really is, like any place that has a limited amount, even though it's kind of empty, there's a lot of national parks, and so it's difficult to find land. You have local housing issues and all that stuff. But the greater area, whether it includes Idaho, etc., is beautiful. It's a marvelous place to live. It's small town America, great public schools. It just, I'm a home. I've been converted.
We're going to package up this segment and send it to our friends.
Yeah,
in Wyoming,
I really should do their. I should do their tourism brochure,
infomercials.
So
but you didn't move there because of the crypto regulation.
I did not. No, I moved before.
They've been very proactive. They have a stablecoin commission. They're looking into launching a stablecoin.
Cynthia Lummis has done great work there.
Cynthia Lummis has been very supportive. The governor, Mark Gordon, has been very supportive. State representatives have been very supportive. And again, they've created an environment where there are guardrails in place, but there is an environment sort of similar to the way you've seen internationally in places like the UAE or Singapore, where there are rules and there are regulations,
it is a
but
very
they're trying to promote innovation.
That's right. It is a very well-governed state.
You like crypto now?
I do sort of like crypto now. I came at crypto. I was probably a little later.
He was mad at me when we went into crypto.
Told you not to do it.
I wouldn't say I was mad when we went into crypto, but I had some healthy skepticism of
he was riffing on me a little bit.
The use cases. People talk about the different use cases for crypto, in terms of medical records and all this stuff, and I don't necessarily see that playing out, but as financial infrastructure, which is sort of its primary use case, I started to crystallize more in my mind why a decentralized system makes sense.
You own any NFTs?
I do own NFTs.
No, he's big on this.
Yeah,
There you go. There you go. I got him.
I thought
got
the
some
first
pudgy
way.
penguins? What do you got?
I do have a pudgy
Some,
penguin.
like, dick pics,
Yeah.
though, too, right, or something?
Crypto dick butts. Okay. Talk about the meme. The meme is the message. You know, it's sort of like the cringier the meme, the more successful the NFT is. And Pudgy Penguins is the one that's capitalizing most on that now. But I really got into NFTs because I wanted to just dive deeper into the culture. It's as much of a technology revolution as it is a cultural revolution. You talk about the young people moving to Jackson Hole and driving our society forward. You know, just young people have embraced crypto, and I think it's inevitable it'll become a big part of our society as a result of the younger generation being so enthusiastic about it.
Here's to that. And it's fun.
Yeah.
It's not boring.
No, it's definitely not boring.
Well, you are a terrific guest, and you're a brilliant entrepreneur, and John and I wish you amazing success on
Likewise.
Figment, and I hope you'll come to Jackson and spend some time with us.
Well, you'll be my neighbor, so
in your backyard. So I hope you'll come and see us.
Absolutely, I'm glad to be on the journey
We really
with you.
appreciate you joining Salt Talks with us today.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you everybody for tuning in to today's Salt Talk with Lorien Gabel, the founder and CEO of Figment. Just a reminder, you can watch all of our Salt Talks free and on demand on our YouTube channel and on our website, which is salt.org.
He's doing this without a teleprompter. It's very impressive.
You can follow us on social media at Salt Conference, on Twitter, or X, I should say, is where we're most active. And you can also follow Anthony Scaramucci, who it's election season, so you'll get a combination of crypto commentary and Trump bashing. So it's a fun ride following Anthony on Twitter as well.
Supporting the institutions of the democracy and a decentralized state, as
that
opposed to a tyrant. But that's fine.
Had to get that in.
There you
100%.
go.
There we go.
But on behalf of Anthony and the entire Salt team, thank you for tuning in to today's Salt Talk, and we will see you here soon.
Thank you.